It's such a brilliant film. I really love all the ways that you've mapped out Delia's sounds and life and experience and work. And I'd love to know what sparked your interest in Delia and how long you've been working on this film.
It's been a long time, actually. I would say, really, the idea started around 10 years ago. I mean, it's been in and out of drawers, I have to admit that. And it has been difficult getting people interested. So I was, just after Delia died, her archive was presented to Manchester University, to Screen Studies department there. And Dr. David Butler, who took it under his wing, was really wonderful and incredibly helpful to us when we approached him. But I'd read about the archive. She died in 2001, archive appeared, I think, well, I went to go and see it, I think in 2007, so it's actually ages and ages ago. And I didn't know what to expect. You know, this woman's life, the contents of her attic. And I walked into David's office, and at that stage, you know, he opened a cupboard, and there were these boxes and boxes of cereal boxes full of tapes, 267 quarter-inch reel-to-reel tapes containing her life's work, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of papers at that stage. So I feel like I've grown up with the archive as it's developed. It now lives at John Ryland's library, so I've visited many, many, many times. And I think I was very lucky, because after I developed this idea of trying to work with the archive, consider all the possibilities of how there's no biography of this person. There is just this incredible, beautiful sort of soundscape left behind. It just seemed to me, I didn't know how to tell the story, but it seemed to me it's an idea that just wouldn't go away. And I was a great fan of Peter Strickland's films and also Ben Wheatley's films. And I looked up who produces all these films. They're so good. And it was Andy Stark at Rook Films. And I thought, oh, shall I approach him? See what happens. You know, other people have said maybe yes, perhaps, but nothing really took off. And then I think it was about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I approached Andy. He read the script. He was amazing, got on board with it straight away and said, okay, let's make a short. And I'd already had this idea that I couldn't quite get out of my mind of doing it all in one space. For the sort of body of the film to live within a workshop of its own. And he liked that idea. So that's when he said, let's do a short, see if it works, which we did, which LFF screened in 2018, which was thrilling to have it there. And then as a result of the short, we secured this brilliant opportunity with Arena, and Arena BBC gave us money to make the film. That's
I think it definitely captures, I mean, now you mentioned like Peter Strickland and Ben Wheatley, that sort of British folklore kind of witchy vibe. I really love how in many ways the film feels like it's a film of echoes, it has all those layers of sound and connection. And I was wondering if you could talk about that element of how you layered it narratively, as well as sort of the way Delia uses sound in layers.
Exactly. I mean, this sort of, the process of how to make the film really evolved over, you know, all the years of engaging with the archive, and also watching the archive grow and having this main idea of there is so many contradictions. Every time you interview a person, somebody tells you something slightly different. You know, this is the way it is with all of our lives, you know, and we all end up with, you know, sadly, suitcases and boxes of our lives packed away. People will wonder who we were. That was my big question, is what do you make of a person from what they leave behind? And everybody's stories are contradictory, and there's no single perspective that will ever describe somebody's life. And even, you know, a multitude of perspectives will not describe a life either. So who am I to sit there and say what Delia's life was? There is no biography. I always struggle with biography because there's so much, seems to me, so much fiction. There must be, because it's always an act of imagination. So that's where I sort of my actor hat came on, and I thought, God, if I was engaging with this archive as a sort of research to play this person, which I obviously was my plan to do anyway, but it became natural to direct it and write it, and all of those things became part of this sort of embodiment that I was trying to research. And so it became a very organic process, in a way, because that was the moment that I realized that it was the sound that she left behind was the key to this. And that's when I realized, you know, I'm not a historian, I'm not an academic, and I'm not a musician. That's when I thought I need to work with a musician. I need to work with a musician early on in devising this, so that we are both, she will embody the music and I will try and understand the character through this sort of amazing ephemera and fragments left by Delia. And that was really exciting. That's when I approached Cosey Fanni Tutti. I'm just a massive fan of her work. She'd also worked, you know, since her Throbbing Crystal days and beyond, you know, right up to now, she works with that whole idea of musique concrète, of sampling sounds, repurposing sound. She seemed to me the most perfect person to work with. You know, I was very lucky that she embraced the idea and came on board, and she was an amazing collaborator. Really joy to turn up at the archive with Cosey and listen together, and then lots of stuff started to come.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's like you've got these two legends of sound kind of working together in that kind of communicating through the legacy of sound.
Exactly. And I was fascinated by that reaching across eras thing, because that's always in my mind, you know, which is why I think in the film you've probably noticed the stained glass windows. Stained glass windows are, you know, other iconic pioneering female role models, and then there's also the scene of you know, a fanciful imaginary scene of Delia trying to reach across eras herself to, I don't know, give herself power and strength and connect with other women that had been, you know, different eras but treated the same way. And I'm really interested in that idea. I think that's always been a fantasy of mine as well. When you don't know what to do, you imagine who's been here before, you know. And sadly, in our world, as an actor, you know, it's only now really that I can feel this shift, this amazing shift where things are beginning to change. But it's only the beginning. It's been a long struggle, hasn't it?
Yeah, I really loved that scene with the conversation over the years between her and the paintings, and I was interested in, you know, who are the women in the paintings, and what if you could go into it a bit more.
Yes, it needs a bit more explanation, really. It's Mary Wollstonecraft and Ada Lovelace, and I chose Mary because, you know, I'm quite fascinated by her. There she is in the, you know, 18th century, mother of Mary Shelley, and this incredible social reformer, first feminist. Just interested in her generally, and imagining, you know, what advice would she give to Delia at that point? Would Delia want to meet her even? And then of course Ada Lovelace, a mathematician, and I think there's a couple of reasons why I had that in my mind. I like the idea of this reaching across eras, which, you know, Cosey was doing with Delia, this idea of passing the baton, not just of music, but of bravery and having to dig deep and reach down to places that are only feel instinctive, because there's not people necessarily around you doing a similar thing. So I imagined what would happen. I was just in a fantasy, really, a dream of wishing that for Delia, in a way that she could have connected with someone, and that she could have taken this strength, and wondering what would happen should that happen. And also, you know, there's you know, a sort of a precedent for that fantasy dinner party anyway, with, you know, Judy Chicago's dinner party, and Carol Churchill's Top Girls. It's always been such a powerful image to me, those two pieces of work. And it was just a slight homage to that in a very small way.
Well, I think it chimes perfectly with that sense of intuition and the kind of spirit of Delia that comes through in the recordings that you have, like when she talks about how she was trying to make the sound of a heat haze, or the sound of camels on sack, just that very kind of imaginative and open, playful way of thinking, how can you reach through and embody things that maybe people haven't really thought much about bringing together before.
And that's what fascinates me as well about Delia, that way, that sort of intuitive imagination that she has, as well as being this incredible mathematician, and sort of someone that's experimenting in her field with such intensity, and it's so rigorous and slow, that process, but so sort of beautiful. You know, you'd imagine that something that's so mathematical and so like these sort of great tapestries of sound that she's physically cutting up note by note by note. I mean, the hours, I can't even imagine that it would somehow sound, I don't know, sort of sterile or worked out, or like it was sort of robotic. But there's sort of the emotion that she manages to convey in these pieces, I think it's kind of sublime and genius. I was really fascinated by it, and also her patience. I can't imagine that.
I really love how you bring together those two aspects, those kind of contradicting aspects, though, which the spiritual kind of intuitive side, which is brilliant and experimental, but also the fact that she is a mathematician. She is like incredibly, like in an objective way, very like smart and knows her stuff, and that everyday sexism that she faces, in which they're kind of reducing her into the little lady who was, I don't know, what is it? A numbers enchantress or something.
Oh yes, enchantress of numbers.
Yeah. You know, how the film sort of shows that you can be both things. You can be all sorts of different aspects to work in that world.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, a layer of having to justify your existence in a workplace. I mean, I always got the sense, the more I was sort of researching it, was that she was sort of useful, but also a bit of an irritant in a system where her contribution was being continually downplayed. And I think that is a story that, you know, initially when I took this around to people, before I met Andy Stark, who saw it straight away and went, this is good. You know, he understood why it was a good idea, and that we could make a film. Other people are, oh, it's a bit niche. And you think, no, it's not niche. It's like half the population have experienced this. It's not niche, apart from the fact that she's, you know, created this amazing theme tune that we had no idea that it was a female electronic music composer who realised it, until, you know, it's now we're starting to learn about her, but it's only very recently.
Yeah, I did wonder if coming up against those sort of attitudes all the time would have contributed to a sort of burnout and needing to retreat.
Yes, absolutely. I wonder that too. And I don't know. I mean, she says very nobly in an interview that, you know, she absolutely made her own choices. She decided she'd come to the end of the line. And I think she could see ahead where things were going. She was at a really interesting point at the radiophonic workshop, I think, when tape manipulation and synthesizers crossed over. And she knew at that point, in the sort of technology of synthesizers, she wasn't interested in the sounds they were making. She wasn't interested in technology for the sake of technology, which I think perhaps a lot of people around her were, the potential of what that could do in the future. She didn't want to think about that. She was thinking about, no, this is my work. These are the tools of my work. and I want to continue to make my work like this. This is how it's good. This is how it's interesting. And she'd only really been working in that way before the synthesizers arrived, you know, for maybe 8 or 9 years. So there was a whole world ahead in, I guess. I mean, the synthesizer world and the computer technology and everything, it all caught up with her. And of course, she would have loved it when it got better. But she didn't want to hang around for it whilst, you know, the workshop became more of a service provider for all these lots and lots of, you know, so much stuff was coming in for them to do. They had to speed up the process. For her, it wasn't about speed. It was about making amazing pieces. That took time. And what happens in our culture, I wonder, I'm just fascinated by that. You know, how many things do we lose because we want to trade it for something that's faster and quicker, better, whatever, or is it better? I don't know. It seems to be a cycle we talk about now with technology and the way it goes.
I think that spirit is also kind of summed up when she's in that bit of recording, when she's talking about how the economy falling apart would be a good thing because it would bring people back to human values. Basically, tear down the sort of capitalist aspect of time and speed and what we need to be doing, and dismantle that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the things that I felt that we discovered in through the process of making the film was, I just like the idea that she lived outside of time and space as other people experience it, that she was in her own time and space, and that she stuck to that all the way through her life. And there was real integrity there. She lived her life the way she wanted to, and she had total agency, and she made choices for better or for worse. They weren't always the best ones, but she certainly was strong and made her choices, and stuck by them. I think she's it's going to be very hard to let go of this film, because I'm going to have to let go of her at some point.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what it felt like to, because both director and actress in the film, you've stepped into her shoes, and what it felt like to really kind of dig down into her character and how it felt to embody her.
Really, a real liberation and an absolute privilege, and an amazing, I thought, what an amazing gift to leave behind. You know, these tapes, these makeup tapes, so her sound experiments. So from what I understood, she cleared her desk in 1973, and those reels of tape went with her, and they lived in an attic until she died. So to be able to look at those and listen to those and think, wow, that's what you, that's lived, all of that lived inside you, you know. It was very humbling to be able to do that, to have access to it, and really interesting talking about it with Cosey. There's a sort of secret in the film which I can tell you now because you've seen it. There's probably no way of knowing it's there, but Cosey did this. We talked about something. We listened to it all at the end, and we felt it was good, and we were happy. And then we thought, well, there is something missing. What do we need? What do we need? And we thought we need a sort of a coming together of all of our voices, Cosey's, mine, and Delia's. So we sampled Delia's voice, and we sampled mine, and we sampled Cosey's. And there is a sort of a kind of celestial sound that appears all the way through, from the beginning of the film all the way to the end, which is basically all three of our voices merged together in these pieces and tones that Cosey's made. And I was saying, I wish we could flag it up. And I thought, no, we don't need to flag it up. Hopefully that will sort of underpin it in some way. You will get a sense of that, because we wanted it to be understood that it's a construction of her life. And that's the other point of having this thing played out in a studio space, was that this is a construction, and it's pushing the idea of what somebody's life is. And this is yet another mythology, but it's our response to her work.
Well, I think the harmony of how it all works together is it's fantastic. It's just a brilliant sort of experiment of a film of psycho-acoustics.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's all we've got time for, but
thank you
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.